Welcome to the next edition of Tea Time with Pete and Alan. Today we're actually talking about a really quite important topic, which often gets overlooked. I know that we often have letters written to us in the magazine about this, and Alan often has to act as Dr. Sircom to give his advice to some of our readers. And that is the issue of ear health. And hearing loss, essentially. As one ages, one loses one's hearing capacities, and it's something that is quite an interesting topic, particularly with more and more people wearing headphones and in-ear monitors, and often listening at a volume which is actually quite detrimental to your hearing. So. Yeah, Alan, and tell me, we've had a lot of letters about it over the years. Is there a common ailment that we kind of find through our readers?
Yeah, well, let's first of all preface this by saying I'm not a doctor. I'm not an audiologist. I'm not an ENT specialist. If you have problems, see someone. If you're worried about things, see someone. But I can't help but reiterate that, and also don't try any. There are limited things that we can do at home. If you think you have a problem, don't try and fix it. See someone. But yeah, moving on from there are some common issues. I mean, essentially, our hearing at 10 is phenomenal. Our hearing is we will hear things from 20 hertz, which is deep bass noises, below 20 hertz, right up to, well, a little beyond, often about 20 kilohertz or beyond, and that's way outside the limits of an orchestra. That's kind of pretty bat-eared. However, we do lose that, and just through the course of being alive, one's hearing gradually starts to drop, especially at high frequency. What we get is that usually by the time you're the joke used to be, by the time you're old enough to afford a good audio system, you're too deaf to hear it. However, that's not strictly true. But I mean, in essence, if you look at an orchestra's work, most of an orchestra exists within the frequency range of about 40, 50 hertz, right up to about 8 kilohertz. By the time you get to 8 kilohertz, you're listening to piccolos. So although our hearing drops with age, and by the time you're 40, you're probably down to about 17, 18 kilohertz. By the time you're 50, it's about 15, and it keeps dropping. Most of that still doesn't count for the stuff we listen to. Most of that doesn't count for music. So that's the good news. We still have acuity. And what we tend to find is that there's still great acuity within that mid-range, which is the bit where most of music happens. So we don't necessarily lose a great deal of problems. So listening to good audio isn't a waste of money. But there are issues that affect hearing. It's not just age. Hearing loss can happen through environmental damage, which is you spend your life working outdoors, you spend your life working on something like a drill, and that's going to cause some problems. Now, that can be helped with ear defenders and whatever, but I've known people who work outdoors from a daily basis, and this, maybe they sell newspapers or something like that. If they were newspapers to sell, maybe they work on the street and do something like that. Their hearing's going to get lost over a course of time, because in the middle of a big city, it's a loud, noisy environment. It's sort of in the 90 plus dB, just being around in there. And if you're in that environment for hours and hours on end, things go awry. So there's that environmental issue. There's also issues from short-term hearing damage from short-term events, or from events which are mid to long term, and that's where the problem comes in with headphones and stuff. What we tend to get is that every time if you go to a concert and you come away with hissing ears, oh, that was really loud. Yeah, that's actually damage. Our body overcomes that, we do a workaround. But that hiss is damage that don't come back. So if you've been to a lot of concerts, if you've done that, that hiss eventually becomes damage, because in essence, we can't rebuild those parts of the hearing that we've damaged, that we've lost. We can work around them, but eventually the workarounds become too hard to do. And that's one of the problems that we get. And that's a problem that people are seeing now with a lot of people using headphone use. Now, in Europe, we're slightly luckier in that there is a ceiling put across in the volume level that we can get from phones, for example. So that means that you can't play at punishing levels, in theory. In reality, there's usually workarounds. You can get around it, and you can listen to something that's too loud. And if you listen repeatedly at a very, very loud level, hearing damage is an inevitability. You don't notice it immediately. It takes time to creep up on you, but it does, and it will. And unfortunately, the louder you play, the shorter amount of time you can expose yourself to it. It's like an X-ray. The shorter amount of time you can expose yourself to it, the better. If you listen to loud music in earphones, quite often you don't realize how loud it is, and you'll notice it years down the line when suddenly you can't hear as well as you used to. There are other issues as well. Genetics plays a part. All sorts of matters can contribute to problems, and those we can't overcome. Now, there are certain other things that we can. For example, wax buildup. Here at Sircom, the waxy goo that fills your ears. Now, that's a useful thing to have. We need to have that to stop getting ear infections. So if you didn't have that waxy buildup, that wax in your ears, then you would be prone to all sorts of damage from that. So that's a constant companion, and should be. However, as with some people, our ear canals are wrong. Not wrong, they're differently shaped. They might be kinky, or they might be small, or whatever. And the normal transit of wax, which tends to automatically disappear and fall out of your ear without you even noticing it during your sleep or whatever, that gets disrupted. Added to which is another problem, that as we age and hair goes out of here and it starts to come out of here and here, when it comes out of there, that acts as a great block. So if you're not careful, that you end up with this great, lovely, waxy, hairy buildup stuffed inside your ears. And that can cause temporary blockage. It's uncomfortable, and it wrecks your hearing temporarily. It doesn't damage it, but it causes a block that you have to get fixed. And the fixing of it can cause damage, because what we tend to do is go, oh, that's easy, get out a Q-tip, and other versions are available, other buds are available, and put one in the ear and do that. Worst thing you can do, because first of all, you're just pushing the wax down, but also you're basically trying to damage your hearing. You damage your eardrum in doing so. You won't damage your hearing permanently, but if you're really, really violent with it, you can actually damage your eardrum, which will be a temporary issue.
My previous father-in-law was a ENT surgeon, and he always said you should never put something smaller than your elbow in your ear.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very good line, and it's absolutely right. And I've tried, and it's really difficult. But yeah, essentially, if you get that build up, a good tip, if you are prone to this, is you can buy some medical grade olive oil, which you squirt in your ears. It's bigger than your elbow, technically. If you squirt it in your ears once every fortnight or so, that will help that transit and help keep them nicely lubricated.
But I think, as Alan said at the beginning, if you have concerns, seek out your doctor, your GP. Yeah. We're not here to give medical.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But in terms of if you do see an audiologist about it, and if you do have waxy buildup, they have things. There are two options: there's syringing and there's microsuction that they do, or a combination of those. These work exceptionally well, as opposed to all the sort of folk cures like ear candles and things like that just don't. really don't, because the last thing you want to do is stick a wax candle in your ear to make wax go away. Apparently that people think that works through some magic wicking. I just think putting a burning thing in your ear is probably not a good idea. But the key part of this is that I say this because I have had to have the my ears degunked periodically, and I got to say, the first day after you have it done, the world is amazing. You can hear time. You can hear the planets moving. It's incredible. You can hear absolutely everything. I heard elks in Canada getting born. Yeah, it's amazing. It's superb when you get it done. It only lasts for a few hours and then you get back to normal. But that first thing after having blocked ears, suddenly thinking, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's great." Unfortunately, as part of my job, if I'm listening to in-ear monitors, if you have a propensity to waxy build-up, that's kind of a perfect way of making it worse, in my opinion. Others might disagree, but certainly I found if I have to listen to an awful lot of IEMs, it seems to be a thing, particularly with one ear, that's a bit dinky or kinky. I can't remember, but that's just me.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you have kinky ears, then you know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Alan. And yeah, be sure to comment, like, follow us, and look out for our next episode coming up shortly. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.